It started with a simple act of kindness, just helping a young boy struggling with his shoelaces. But when the janitor stepped in, he had no idea that this moment would spark an incredible, life-changing bond. As the boy grows closer to him, the janitor's quiet world is turned upside down until the boy says something that shocks him to his core. "Mommy says you're my daddy." The boy's mother, a successful but lonely woman, has been watching, and now she wants him to take on a life-changing role. But when the janitor's heart is pulled in two directions, will he sacrifice everything for the future? Or will the love he's found in this unlikely family be the real answer? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The early morning sunlight streamed through the school's windows, casting long shadows across the freshly mopped floors. Eli Turner moved methodically through the quiet hallways, his mop creating gentle swooshing sounds that echoed in the empty space. The familiar scent of cleaning solution filled the air as he worked, finding comfort in the routine he'd maintained for years. At 54, Eli had grown accustomed to the solitude of these morning hours. The silence reminded him of the peaceful moments he once shared with his wife, Sarah, before she passed away 5 years ago. These days, his world revolved around his work at the school and taking care of his son, Charlie. The hallway gleamed under the fluorescent lights as Eli finished the last section. He took pride in his work, knowing that a clean environment made a difference in the children's day. As he wheeled his cleaning cart toward the storage closet, a small sound caught his attention. Near one of the classroom doors, a young boy sat on the floor, his dark hair falling over his forehead as he hunched over his untied shoelaces. Eli could hear the boy's frustrated sighs as his small fingers fumbled with the laces. "Come on," the boy muttered, his voice trembling slightly. He pulled at the laces, but they only tangled further. Eli watched for a moment, his heart tugging at the sight. The boy couldn't have been more than 8 years old, and his expensive school uniform looked pristine, except for the untied shoes. Something about his determined yet discouraged expression reminded Eli of his own son at that age. Setting his cleaning supplies aside, Eli approached slowly, not wanting to startle the child. "Need a hand there, buddy?" The boy looked up, his eyes wide and uncertain. Eli noticed they were a striking shade of blue, filled with a mix of embarrassment and hope. I can't get them right," he admitted quietly. "That's okay," Eli said, keeping his voice gentle. "Mind if I show you?" The boy nodded, and Eli carefully knelt beside him. His knees creaked a bit, but he ignored the discomfort. "I'm Eli. What's your name?" "Max," the boy replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Well, Max, tying shoes can be tricky, but I've got a little trick that might help." Eli picked up one of the laces. "See, first we make an X, like this." Max watched intently as Eli demonstrated, his small hands hovering near the laces. "Now, take this end and loop it under," Eli continued, moving slowly so Max could follow along, "like you're making a tunnel for the other lace to go through." A slight smile appeared on Max's face as he mimicked Eli's movements with the other shoe. His fingers trembled slightly, but he managed to create the basic cross. "That's it," Eli encouraged. "Now for the fun part. We're going to make bunny ears." "Bunny ears?" Max's eyes lit up a little. "Yep, take both laces and make 2 loops, like rabbit ears," Eli demonstrated, and Max followed along, his tongue sticking out slightly in concentration. "Now cross these bunny ears, and this is the important part. Push one through the hole in the middle." Max's fingers fumbled a bit, but Eli patiently guided him through the motion. "Pull them tight, and there you go." The boy's face broke into a bright smile as he looked down at his newly tied shoes. The bow wasn't perfect, but it was secure. "I did it." "Sure did," Eli said warmly. "Want to try the other one by yourself?" Max nodded eagerly and set to work on his second shoe. His movements were slower, more deliberate, but he followed each step just as Eli had shown him. When he finished, he looked up at Eli with pure joy radiating from his face. "Thank you," Max said shyly, his voice filled with genuine gratitude. "You're welcome, buddy." Eli felt a warmth spread through his chest, reminded of teaching Charlie these same simple life lessons. The sound of clicking heels against the floor drew their attention to the hallway's entrance. A tall woman in an elegant business suit stood watching them, her posture straight and commanding. Her resemblance to Max was unmistakable. The same blue eyes, though hers held a different kind of intensity. "There you are, Max," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hallway. Max quickly stood up, brushing off his uniform pants. "Mom, look! I learned how to tie my shoes!" The woman, Max's mother, approached them, her heels echoing in the quiet space. Her gaze moved from her son to Eli, who had also risen to his feet. There was something in her look that made Eli feel suddenly self-conscious of his work uniform and the cleaning cart nearby. "Thank you for helping my son," she said, her voice softening slightly. "I'm Victoria Carter." "Eli Turner, ma'am. Just doing my job." Their eyes met, and Eli felt the weight of her gaze. There was something searching in it, something he couldn't quite understand. It made him want to step back, to return to the familiar comfort of his cleaning routine, but he held his ground. "You did more than your job," Victoria said, placing a hand on Max's shoulder. "Not everyone would take the time." Max beamed up at his mother, then looked back at Eli. "Can you show me again tomorrow if I forget?" Before Eli could respond, Victoria spoke. "I'm sure Mr. Turner has other responsibilities, Max." "It's no trouble," Eli found himself saying, surprised by his own words. "Happy to help any time." Victoria's expression shifted slightly, something unreadable passing across her features. She studied him for a moment longer, her gaze both appreciative and calculating. Eli felt as though she was seeing past his janitor's uniform, past the simple interaction she had witnessed, to something else entirely. It left him feeling exposed, though he couldn't explain why. Victoria Carter's heels clicked against the freshly mopped floor as she approached Eli. Her tailored business suit and pearl necklace seemed out of place in the humble school hallway. She carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from years of success, yet there was something gentle in the way she smiled at him. "I want to thank you properly for helping Max," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Victoria Carter, Max's mother." Eli wiped his palm on his uniform before shaking her hand. "Eli Turner, ma'am. Just doing my job." "No, Mr. Turner. What you did was far more than just a job." Victoria glanced back at Max, who was now walking toward his classroom, his shoelaces perfectly tied. "My son struggles with certain things. Not many people take the time to help him the way you did." Eli shifted his weight, uncomfortable with the praise. The mop handle felt solid and reassuring in his grip. Any decent person would have done the same. Victoria's eyes sparkled with interest. "That's where you're wrong, Mr. Turner. Decent people are harder to find than you might think." She paused, studying him with careful consideration. "Actually, I've been looking for someone like you." "Someone like me?" Eli's brow furrowed. "Yes, the school board has approved a special project, and I'm heading the committee." Victoria reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a small business card. "We need someone trustworthy, someone who understands children and knows this school inside and out." Eli accepted the card, noting the embossed gold lettering that spelled out her name and title, Victoria Carter, CEO, Carter Enterprises. The weight of the card felt significant in his rough, work-worn hands. "What kind of project are we talking about?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral despite his growing curiosity. Victoria smiled, clearly pleased by his interest. "The school needs a complete security upgrade. New cameras, better locks, improved emergency protocols. But more than that, we need someone who can help implement these changes while keeping the children's well-being in mind." She gestured around the hallway. "Someone who knows every corner of this building, every potential risk, every safe haven." Eli nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "And you think I'm that person?" "I know you are," Victoria said with conviction. "The position would require more hours, of course. You'd need to attend meetings, consult with security experts, help draft new procedures." She paused, her expression becoming more serious. "The compensation would reflect the increased responsibility. We're looking at nearly double your current salary." The mention of money made Eli's heart skip a beat. He thought of Charlie, his son, and the mounting pile of bills at home. Double the salary could mean no more choosing between new school supplies and proper winter boots. It could mean finally fixing the leak in their roof. "I appreciate the offer, Mrs. Carter, but please, call me Victoria," she interrupted gently. "And before you say no, take some time to think about it. The position would still allow you to maintain your current duties. We'd just be adding to them." Eli gripped the mop handle tighter, his mind racing with possibilities. How long would the project last? Initially, 6 months, Victoria replied. But if things go well, there might be opportunities for a permanent position with increased responsibilities. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Eli considered her words. Through the nearby window, he could see children starting to arrive for the day, their backpacks bouncing as they rushed toward the entrance. I'd need to arrange things with my son's schedule, he said slowly. Make sure I can still be there when he needs me. Victoria's face softened. Of course. We can work around your family commitments. Family should always come first. Something flickered in her eyes as she said this, a hint of emotion quickly masked. Eli looked down at the business card again, then back at Victoria. Her perfectly styled hair and expensive clothes spoke of a world very different from his own, yet there was something genuine in the way she'd thanked him for helping Max, something real beneath the polished exterior. All right, he said finally. I'll do it. Victoria's smile widened. Excellent. I'll have HR send over the paperwork today. She reached into her bag again and pulled out another card. This has my personal number. Call me if you have any questions or concerns. As she turned to leave, her perfume lingered in the air, a subtle reminder of the vast difference between their worlds. Eli watched her walk away, her heels still clicking against the floor he'd just cleaned. He tucked both cards into his pocket, feeling their weight against his chest. The morning bell rang, and students began flooding the hallways. Eli returned to his work, pushing his mop across the floor with practiced movements. But his mind was elsewhere, wondering about Victoria Carter and the life she led. He thought about her wealth, her confident stride, the way she seemed to make life-changing decisions as easily as others might choose what to have for lunch. The morning sun cast long shadows through the school windows as Eli wheeled his cart of cleaning supplies down the East Wing corridor. It was earlier than his usual start time, but the renovation project required him to begin before the students arrived. His new responsibilities felt strange, clipboard in hand instead of his trusty mop, checking measurements instead of scrubbing floors. The small gymnasium needed updating, new paint, better lighting, and proper storage units for the sports equipment. Eli studied the work order Victoria had left him, running his calloused finger down the list of tasks. The extra money would help with Charlie's upcoming school expenses, but something about the situation still felt unusual to him. The door creaked open behind him. Eli turned to find Max standing there, backpack hanging from one shoulder. The boy had arrived nearly an hour before classes were set to begin. Hi, Mr. Turner, Max said softly, hovering near the doorway. His shoelaces were tied perfectly the way Eli had shown him yesterday. Good morning, Max. Eli offered a gentle smile. You're here awful early today. Max shuffled his feet. Mom had a meeting. He paused, looking around the gym. What are you doing? Well, Eli said, gesturing to the space around them. I'm going to help fix up this old gym, make it nicer for you kids. Max's eyes lit up. Can I help? Eli checked his watch. There was plenty of time before classes started. Sure, buddy. Want to help me measure these walls? For the next 45 minutes, Max followed Eli around the gymnasium, holding the end of the measuring tape and writing numbers in a small notebook with careful precision. His handwriting was neater than most 8-year-olds Eli had seen, each number perfectly formed and aligned. You've got good handwriting, Eli remarked as Max recorded another measurement. Mom says presentation is important, Max replied, sounding older than his years. She makes me practice. There was something in the way he said it, a hint of weariness that no child should carry. Eli recognized it from his own son Charlie's expression in the months after his wife's passing. As they worked, Max asked thoughtful questions about the renovation process. He wanted to know why they needed to measure everything, how the new storage units would be installed, and what kind of paint they would use. His questions weren't the typical curious chatter of a child. They were organized, logical, seeking to understand the entire process. You know, Eli said, sitting down on the gym floor for a break. You remind me of my son Charlie when he was your age, always wanting to know how things work. Max sat down too, crossing his legs carefully to avoid wrinkling his pressed khakis. You have a son? Sure do. He's 9 now. Does he go to this school? Eli shook his head. No. He goes to Lincoln Elementary across town. That's closer to our house. Max's face fell slightly. Oh. He traced patterns on the floor with his finger. Do you think... Could I meet him sometime? The question caught Eli off guard. There was such hope in Max's voice, such earnest desire for connection. Well, maybe someday, he said carefully. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Max spoke again. My dad died when I was little. He said it matter-of-factly, but his eyes stayed fixed on the floor. I don't really remember him. Eli's heart tightened in his chest. I'm sorry to hear that, Max. Mom doesn't like to talk about him. Max pulled his knees up to his chest. She works a lot. The nanny usually takes care of me, but she quit last week. The words tumbled out of Max like he'd been holding them in for a long time. Eli listened, noting how the boy's shoulders seemed to carry an invisible weight. Here was a child who had learned to be self-sufficient too early, who spoke like a small adult because that's what was expected of him. You know, Eli said gently, it's okay to just be a kid sometimes. Max looked up at him, confusion crossing his face. What do you mean? Well, Eli reached for the measuring tape. Sometimes it's good to have a little fun. In one smooth motion, he extended the tape measure out several feet and let it zip back into its case with a satisfying whoosh. Max's eyes widened, and a genuine smile spread across his face. Can I try? For the next few minutes, they took turns with the measuring tape, letting it zip back with increasingly dramatic sound effects. Max's laughter echoed through the empty gym, pure, unrestrained, childlike. It was probably the first time the boy had played with something so simple, so unpretentious. The morning bell rang, startling them both. Max quickly composed himself, smoothing his shirt and picking up his backpack. But there was a lingering brightness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Thank you, Mr. Turner, he said, standing up straight. Can I come back tomorrow? Any time, Max. Eli smiled warmly. And you can call me Eli. As Max walked toward the door, he turned back one more time. Eli. His voice was small but clear. You're really good at explaining things. Like the shoe tying yesterday and the measuring today. Better than my tutors. Before Eli could respond, Max had disappeared into the hallway, leaving Eli alone with his thoughts. He gathered up his supplies, thinking about the boy who seemed to carry the weight of adulthood on such young shoulders. There was something both admirable and heartbreaking about Max's maturity. A child who had learned to be proper and polite, but who lit up at the simple joy of playing with a measuring tape. The gymnasium felt emptier without Max's presence. Eli looked at the notebook where Max had carefully recorded their measurements, each number written with precision. Below the last measurement, Max had drawn a small, detailed sketch of the measuring tape, complete with tiny numbers on its edge. The drawing showed talent well beyond his years, but more than that, it revealed his attention to detail, his need to get things right, to meet the high expectations that seemed to surround him. Eli tucked the notebook into his pocket, making a mental note to save that page. Something told him that Max would be back tomorrow, and the day after that, seeking more than just company or entertainment. The boy was looking for something else, something that all the tutors and nannies and private schools couldn't provide. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the school hallway, casting long shadows across the freshly waxed floor. Eli stood in the middle of what would soon become a new reading nook, carefully measuring the space where bookshelves would be installed. The sound of clicking heels against tile made him look up. Victoria Carter walked toward him, her designer suit perfectly pressed and her posture impeccable. She carried a leather portfolio under one arm and a coffee cup in her other hand. Despite her polished appearance, there was something tired in her eyes that Eli noticed immediately. "Good morning, Mr. Turner," she said, her voice warm but professional. "I thought I'd stop by and see how the renovation is progressing." "Please, just Eli is fine," he said, setting down his measuring tape. "The contractor should be here tomorrow to start on the bookshelves. We've cleared the space and prepared the walls." Victoria nodded, her eyes scanning the area. "It's going to be wonderful. Max loves to read, you know. He spends hours in his room with his books." Her voice softened when she mentioned her son, but there was a hint of sadness in it too. "He's a bright kid," Eli said, remembering how articulate Max had been during their brief conversations. "Very mature for his age." Victoria's professional facade cracked slightly. She set her coffee down on a nearby windowsill and wrapped her arms around herself, as if suddenly cold. "Sometimes I worry he's too mature. He's had to grow up so fast since." She trailed off, looking away. Eli understood the unspoken words. Loss had a way of aging children beyond their years. He'd seen it in his own son, Charlie. Would you mind if we sat for a moment? Victoria gestured to 2 chairs that hadn't yet been moved to storage. I'd like to hear your thoughts on something. Eli nodded, wiping his hands on his work pants before taking a seat. Victoria settled into the chair across from him, smoothing her skirt with practiced grace. Max talks about you, you know, she said quietly. He mentioned how you taught him to tie his shoes the other day. Such a simple thing, but... She paused, collecting herself. His father used to do things like that. Little lessons, everyday moments. Since James passed away, I've struggled to be both mother and father. Eli listened quietly, recognizing the weight of grief in her words. He knew it well himself. Sometimes I feel like I'm failing him, Victoria continued, her perfectly maintained composure beginning to crack. I provide everything he could need materially, but emotionally. She shook her head. I see him withdrawing more and more. Work keeps me so busy, and when I am home, I don't know how to reach him. Being a single parent isn't easy, Eli said gently. We all do our best. Victoria looked at him with sudden interest. You speak from experience? Eli nodded slowly. Lost my wife 5 years ago. My boy Charlie was just 4 at the time. I'm so sorry, Victoria said softly. How do you do it? Balance everything? Eli thought for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I don't always. Some days are harder than others. But I've learned that sometimes the smallest moments matter most. Charlie doesn't need grand gestures. He needs to know I'm there, that I'm present when I am with him. Victoria absorbed his words, her fingers absently tracing the edge of her portfolio. Max used to be so open with me. Now it feels like there's this wall between us I don't know how to break through. Children are more resilient than we think, Eli said. But they need time and patience. And sometimes they just need to know it's okay to feel what they're feeling. Victoria's eyes grew damp, but she quickly blinked away the tears. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple at all, Eli admitted, but it's worth every effort. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the morning sun warming the space around them. Victoria seemed different now, more vulnerable than the confident businesswoman who had first approached him about the renovation project. Thank you, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. For listening, for understanding. She stood up, smoothing her suit jacket. I don't have many people I can talk to about these things. Most of my friends, they don't understand what it's like. Eli rose as well, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Victoria's perfume, subtle and elegant, filled the space between them. Would you? She started, then hesitated. Would you like to get coffee sometime? To talk more? It's nice to speak with someone who understands. The question hung in the air between them. Eli felt his chest tighten with uncertainty. Victoria was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read, hope mixed with something else, something that made him slightly uncomfortable. He began, not sure how to respond. The professional boundaries that had seemed so clear moments ago now felt blurred and uncertain. Victoria seemed to sense his hesitation. Just coffee, she added quickly. As friends. It would be nice to have someone to talk to who's been through similar experiences. Eli shifted his weight, acutely aware of the difference between their worlds, her in her expensive suit, him in his work clothes. The suggestion wasn't inappropriate, exactly, but something about it made him uneasy. I'll think about it, he said finally, his voice gentle but non-committal. Victoria nodded, picking up her coffee cup from the windowsill. Of course. Thank you again for listening, Eli. It means more than you know. She held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary, then turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the tile floor. Eli watched her go, feeling the weight of their conversation settling around him. He picked up his measuring tape, trying to focus back on the task at hand, but his mind kept returning to Victoria's invitation and the look in her eyes when she'd made it. He wasn't sure what to make of it all. The afternoon light filtered through the classroom windows, casting warm rectangles across the wooden floor. Eli pushed his cleaning cart down the empty hallway, the quiet broken only by the gentle squeak of its wheels. He'd gotten used to the peaceful moments after most students had gone home. But lately, those moments had changed. Right on schedule, the patter of small feet echoed from around the corner. A familiar face appeared, Max Carter, his backpack clutched tightly to his chest, wearing a tentative smile. Hi, Mr. Turner, Max said softly, shifting from one foot to the other. Hey there, Max. Eli's weathered face softened into a warm smile. Finished with your homework club already? Max nodded, his eyes brightening. Ms. Johnson said I did really good on my math today. That's great. Eli continued his work, knowing from experience that Max would follow along beside him. Sure enough, the boy fell into step with him, watching intently as Eli moved from task to task. Can I help? Max asked, the words tumbling out quickly as if he'd been holding them back. Eli paused, studying the earnest face looking up at him. There was something in Max's expression that reminded him of Charlie at that age, eager to please, desperate to be useful. Well, I suppose you could learn how to clean a chalkboard properly. That's if you want to. Max's entire face lit up. Really? You'd show me? Sure thing. Eli wheeled his cart to the nearest classroom. First rule of cleaning: always make sure you have the right tools for the job. He opened a drawer in his cart and pulled out 2 erasers and a special cloth. Max watched with complete attention as Eli demonstrated the proper technique. See? You start from the top left corner and work your way down in straight lines. That way you don't miss anything. He handed Max an eraser. Want to try the other side? With careful concentration, Max copied Eli's movements. His strokes were shorter, less confident, but he maintained the same methodical approach Eli had shown him. That's it, Eli encouraged. Nice and steady, no need to rush. As they worked side by side, Max's questions flowed freely. Do you like being a janitor, Mr. Turner? Eli considered the question carefully. You know, some people might think it's not an important job, but I believe every job matters if you do it well. When I clean these classrooms, I'm helping teachers teach better and students learn better. Max nodded thoughtfully, his small hand moving the eraser in careful strokes. My mom says that too, about doing things well. But she's always so busy at her job. Well, your mom has a lot of responsibilities, Eli said gently. Sometimes grown-ups have to work hard to take care of the people they love. Like you take care of Charlie? That's right. Eli showed Max how to use the special cloth to remove the last traces of chalk dust. Being responsible means doing what needs to be done, even when it's not always fun. They moved on to other tasks: straightening desks, picking up forgotten pencils, emptying the recycling bin. With each task, Eli explained the importance of doing things properly, of taking pride in your work no matter how small it seemed. You know what my dad always told me? Eli said as they organized the teacher's desk. He said that kindness is like cleaning. You might have to do it over and over, but it always makes things better. Max's hands stilled on the stack of papers he was straightening. I wish I had a dad to tell me things like that. The words hung in the air, heavy with longing. Eli's heart tightened in his chest. He knelt down to Max's level, making sure to meet his eyes. Hey, you've got plenty of people who care about you. Your mom, your teachers, and you know what? I'm here if you ever need someone to talk to. Max's eyes welled up slightly, but he managed a wobbly smile. Thanks, Mr. Turner. For everything. He looked down at his shoes, the ones Eli had helped him tie that first day, and then back up at Eli's face. The pure gratitude in his expression made Eli's throat tight. You're welcome, buddy. Eli ruffled Max's hair gently. Now, what do you say we finish up here? I've got one more classroom to do before heading home. Max nodded eagerly, already reaching for the cleaning cloth. As they worked together in comfortable silence, Eli couldn't help but notice how natural it felt, this quiet companionship. He thought of Charlie at home, probably already starting his homework, and felt a familiar warmth in his chest. Teaching Max these simple lessons reminded him of all the moments he'd shared with his own son. They finished the last classroom just as the afternoon sun began to turn golden. Max helped Eli put away the cleaning supplies, carefully placing each item exactly where it belonged in the cart. Did I do okay? Max asked, straightening his backpack straps. You did great, Eli assured him. You're a quick learner. The boy beamed at the praise, his whole face glowing with pride. Can I help again tomorrow? We'll see, Eli said, knowing full well he'd welcome the company. Don't you have homework to do? I can do it super fast, Max promised. And then I can come help you, please. Eli chuckled. Tell you what, finish your homework first, and if there's time, you can come find me. Deal? Deal. Max's face was serious as they shook hands, sealing their agreement. Then he surprised Eli by throwing his arms around him in a quick hug. "Thank you, Mr. Turner, for teaching me stuff." Before Eli could respond, Max was already hurrying down the hallway toward the after-school program room, leaving Eli standing there with the lingering warmth of the boy's gratitude wrapping around his heart. Victoria Carter stood in the shadow of the brick building, her designer heels silent on the concrete as she watched the scene unfolding before her. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the schoolyard, where Eli Turner worked steadily, sweeping fallen leaves into neat piles. Her son Max sat nearby on a wooden bench, his legs swinging back and forth as he chatted animatedly. From her vantage point, Victoria could see how Max's face lit up every time Eli responded to one of his questions. It was a brightness she rarely saw at home, despite her best efforts. The janitor's weathered face held a gentle patience as he listened to Max, nodding and offering short responses while continuing his work. "And then in science class," Max's voice carried across the yard, "we learned about the planets. Did you know Jupiter has 79 moons?" Eli paused his sweeping, leaning on the broom handle. "That's quite a number. Must be crowded up there." Max giggled, the sound making Victoria's heart clench. When was the last time she'd heard him laugh like that at home? She watched as Eli showed Max how to properly hold the broom, his large hands guiding her son's smaller ones with careful attention. "See? You want to keep it close to your body," Eli explained, demonstrating the motion. "That way you won't tire out your arms so quick." Max mimicked the movement, his face scrunched in concentration. A small pile of leaves began to form in front of him. "Like this?" "You're a natural," Eli said, his voice warm with approval. Victoria felt something shift inside her chest. There was something about Eli Turner that defied her usual categories. He wasn't like the polished businessmen she dealt with daily, men who spoke in careful euphemisms and hidden agendas. Eli's simplicity was refreshing, the way he moved with purpose, the gentle authority in his voice when he spoke to Max, the quiet dignity he brought to his work. She watched as Max abandoned the broom to chase after a leaf that had escaped their pile. Eli's eyes followed the boy, and Victoria recognized the look in them. It was the same protective warmth she'd seen in her late husband's eyes when he looked at their son. "Mr. Turner!" Max called out, holding up a large maple leaf. "This one's perfect. Can I keep it?" "Sure thing, buddy. Just make sure to press it in a book when you get home, so it stays flat." Victoria's throat tightened. How did this man know exactly what to say? How did he make everything seem so simple, so natural? She thought of their brief conversations over the past few weeks, how he listened without judgment when she mentioned her struggles with Max, how he offered simple but thoughtful advice about connecting with her son. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Eli began gathering his cleaning supplies, and Max hurried to help him, carrying the dustpan with exaggerated care. Victoria noticed how Eli didn't rush to take it from him or dismiss his help. Instead, he adjusted his pace to match Max's slower steps, offering quiet words of encouragement. As they approached the storage closet near where Victoria stood, she could hear their conversation more clearly. "Tomorrow's Friday," Max said, helping Eli put away the broom. "Will you be here?" "Same as always," Eli replied, checking that everything was properly stored. "Got those hallways to keep clean." "Can I help again?" Eli's face softened. "We'll see what your mother says. Don't want to keep you from your studies." Victoria felt a pang of guilt. When was the last time Max had shown such enthusiasm about spending time with her? She watched as Eli locked up the closet, double-checking the handle with the carefulness that seemed to characterize everything he did. Max clutched his maple leaf, looking up at Eli with undisguised admiration. "Thanks for teaching me about sweeping today, Mr. Turner." "Anytime, Max, you did good work." Eli placed a gentle hand on Max's shoulder, and Victoria noticed how her son leaned into the touch, seeking the connection. The nanny appeared at the school entrance right on schedule. Max's shoulders slumped slightly, but he managed a bright smile for Eli. "See you tomorrow. Take care, buddy. Don't forget about that leaf." Victoria watched as Max ran toward the nanny, turning back once to wave at Eli. The janitor returned the wave, waiting until Max was safely inside the car before turning back to his final tasks of the day. In the deepening twilight, Eli moved methodically through his closing routine, checking doors, adjusting a crooked sign, picking up a forgotten pencil from the ground. Victoria found herself studying his movements, noting the quiet confidence in his stride, the careful attention he paid to each small detail. Here was a man who understood the value of simple things, who took pride in work others might consider beneath them. She thought of the men who pursued her, wealthy, ambitious, always pushing for more. None of them had ever made Max's eyes light up the way Eli did with just a simple word of praise. The last rays of sunlight caught Eli's profile as he did his final walkthrough of the schoolyard. Victoria felt that strange mixture of emotions again. Admiration for his quiet strength, longing for the easy way he connected with her son, and something else she wasn't quite ready to name. The autumn breeze rustled through the nearly bare trees as Eli Turner made his final rounds of the day. The setting sun painted the school windows in warm orange hues, creating long shadows that stretched across the empty playground. His worn cart squeaked along beside him, filled with cleaning supplies that had become as familiar to him as old friends. Max sat on the metal bench near the school side entrance, his backpack clutched close to his chest. The boy had been waiting for Eli to finish his shift, something that had become a regular occurrence over the past few weeks. His small legs swung back and forth, barely touching the ground, while his eyes followed Eli's movements with genuine interest. "Almost done, Max," Eli called out, emptying the last trash bin into his cart. "Shouldn't your mom be here soon?" "She's always late," Max replied matter-of-factly, his voice carrying a hint of resignation that seemed too mature for his 8 years. "But that's okay. I like watching you work." Eli's heart squeezed at the child's words. He knew all too well what it felt like to wait for a parent who was running late. His own son Charlie had experienced similar moments, though Eli tried his best to never make them happen. "Well then," Eli said, pushing his cart closer to where Max sat. "Want to help me organize these supplies? Gotta make sure everything's ready for tomorrow." Max's face brightened immediately. He hopped off the bench and practically bounced over to Eli's side. "Can I sort the spray bottles by color again?" "Sure thing, buddy." Eli couldn't help but smile at the boy's enthusiasm for such a simple task. They worked together in comfortable silence for a few minutes, with Max carefully arranging the cleaning supplies while Eli checked his clipboard for the next day's assignments. "Mr. Turner." Max's voice was quieter now, almost hesitant. "Yes, Max? Can I tell you something?" Eli set down his clipboard and gave Max his full attention. He'd learned that when children used that particular tone, it usually meant something important was on their minds. "Of course you can. What's up?" Max fidgeted with the spray bottle in his hands, his eyes fixed on the green liquid inside. "Mommy says you're my daddy." The words hit Eli like a physical blow. He nearly dropped the clipboard he'd just picked up again, his hands suddenly feeling numb. The afternoon air seemed to grow thicker, making it harder to breathe. What did you say?" Max looked up at him with those earnest brown eyes, completely unaware of the impact his words had made. "She was talking on the phone last night. I heard her say it to someone. She said you're like a daddy to me." Eli's mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was hearing. Had Victoria really said that? And if so, what did she mean by it? He felt a complex mixture of emotions washing over him. Confusion, concern, and something else he couldn't quite name. "Max," he began carefully, setting down his clipboard and kneeling to meet the boy's eye level. "I think maybe you misunderstood what your mom was saying." "No, I didn't," Max insisted, his voice taking on that stubborn tone children often use when they're absolutely certain about something. "She said you're better than my real daddy was. That you actually care about me." Eli's throat tightened. He looked at Max's innocent face, seeing the hope and trust there, and felt completely out of his depth. This wasn't just about a misheard conversation anymore. This was about a little boy's need for a father figure, something Eli understood all too well from raising Charlie. "Listen, Max," Eli said gently, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Your mom and I are just friends. I care about you very much, but you don't want to be my daddy?" Max's lower lip trembled slightly, and Eli felt his heart breaking. "That's not what I meant," Eli said quickly, searching for the right words. It's complicated, buddy. Sometimes grown-ups say things that can be misunderstood." Max's shoulders slumped slightly, and he set down the spray bottle he'd been holding. "I know you're not my real daddy," he said quietly, "but I wish you were. You're nice to me and you teach me things, and you never seem too busy to talk to me." Eli's heart sank deeper with each word. He'd known his friendship with Max was special, but he hadn't realized just how much the boy had come to depend on him. The weight of Max's words, the depth of his trust and need, left Eli feeling both honored and terrified. "Max won!" Eli started, but before he could continue, the sound of car tires on gravel interrupted them. Victoria's sleek black SUV pulled into the parking lot right on cue. Max quickly gathered his backpack, his previous vulnerability disappearing behind a practiced smile. "That's Mom," he said, already turning toward the car. "See you tomorrow, Mr. Turner." Eli stood frozen, watching Max run to his mother's car. Through the windshield, he caught Victoria's eye as she waved a greeting. He managed a weak wave back, but his mind was still reeling from Max's words. As the SUV pulled away, Eli leaned heavily against his cart, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened settle onto his shoulders. He'd always known that forming connections with the children at school could be complicated, but this was different. This wasn't just about being a friendly face or a helpful adult. This was about a little boy who saw him as something more, something he wasn't sure he could or should be. The autumn wind picked up, sending a few stray leaves skittering across the empty playground. Eli stood there, his cleaning supplies forgotten, as he grappled with the realization of just how much he'd come to care for Max, and how dangerous that caring might be. The morning sun filtered through the school's front office windows, casting warm squares of light across the linoleum floor. Eli stood near the window, his work-worn hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee from the teacher's lounge. He'd arrived early for his meeting with Victoria, wanting to gather his thoughts after yesterday's surprising comment from Max. The click of heels against the floor announced Victoria's arrival before she appeared. She walked in wearing a simple navy blazer and pencil skirt, but something about her seemed different today. Her usual sharp business demeanor had softened around the edges, like a watercolor painting left in the rain. "Good morning, Eli," she said, offering a gentle smile. "I hope I haven't kept you waiting long." "Not at all," he replied, straightening up from where he'd been leaning against the wall. "I just got here myself." Victoria gestured toward the small conference room adjacent to the office. "Shall we?" Inside the room, morning light streamed through Venetian blinds, creating stripes across the wooden table. Victoria set down her leather portfolio and took a seat, but instead of immediately launching into project details as she usually did, she simply sat there, looking thoughtful. "The renovations are coming along nicely," Eli offered, breaking the silence. "We should have the east wing completed by next week." Victoria nodded, but her mind seemed elsewhere. "That's good to hear." She paused, then added, "Max has been talking about you a lot lately." Eli's heart skipped a beat, remembering Max's words from yesterday. He took a careful sip of his coffee, buying time before responding. "He's a good kid." "He is," Victoria agreed, her voice softening further, "though sometimes I wonder if I'm doing right by him." She ran her fingers along the edge of her portfolio, a nervous gesture that seemed out of character for her usual composed self. "What do you mean?" Eli asked, sensing her need to talk. Victoria sighed, her shoulders dropping slightly. "It's just, being a single parent isn't what I expected. Running a company that I can handle. Spreadsheets, meetings, corporate strategies, those make sense to me. But raising a child alone?" She shook her head. "Some days, I feel like I'm failing him completely." Eli felt a familiar ache in his chest. How many times had he felt the same way about raising Charlie? "It's not easy," he said quietly. "Doing it alone." "No, it's not," Victoria agreed. She looked up at him, her eyes showing a vulnerability he'd never seen before. "Most days, I'm lucky if I see him for more than an hour. Between board meetings and conference calls and everything else." She gestured vaguely with her hand. "I miss so much. Did you know he won first place in his art class last week? I found out from his nanny." Eli nodded slowly. Max had shown him the drawing, a colorful scene of the school playground with two figures standing together. He hadn't mentioned winning any award, but his pride had been evident in the way he'd carefully explained every detail of the picture. "Sometimes," Victoria continued, "I catch glimpses of him with you. The way he lights up when you're teaching him something new, how he hangs on your every word." She smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in it. "He needs that kind of guidance in his life. A male figure he can look up to." Eli shifted in his chair, uncomfortable with the weight of her words. "You're doing the best you can," he said gently. "That's all any of us can do." Victoria's laugh was soft and bitter. "Is it enough, though? Between running the company and trying to maintain some semblance of a normal life? She looked down at her hands. Some days, I feel like I'm drowning. Max needs more than just a mother who shows up for bedtime stories when she's not too tired. The morning sun had climbed higher now, the striped shadows on the table growing shorter. Eli thought about Charlie, about all the times he'd questioned his own abilities as a single parent. He thought about Max's eager face when they worked together, the boy's quiet determination to learn whatever Eli was willing to teach him. We all need help sometimes, Eli said finally. There's no shame in that. Victoria looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. You're good with him, you know. He trusts you. That's rare for Max. He's usually so reserved with people. Eli felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. He thought about Max's smile when they worked together, the way the boys sought him out each day. It wasn't just about teaching him how to tie shoes or clean chalkboards anymore. It had become something deeper, more meaningful. I care about him, Eli admitted quietly. He's a special kid, Victoria nodded, a small smile touching her lips. Yes, he is. She straightened in her chair, some of her usual composure returning. Well, we should probably discuss the project updates. But as they moved on to talk about renovation schedules and budget adjustments, Eli's mind kept drifting back to their conversation. He thought about Max, about the role he'd unconsciously begun to play in the boy's life, about what it meant to be a father, not just to Charlie, but potentially to another child who needed guidance and support. The morning light continued to fill the room as they talked, but Eli barely noticed it. His thoughts were full of two boys, one his own flesh and blood, and another who had somehow worked his way into his heart without him even realizing it. The afternoon sun streamed through the library windows, casting long shadows across the wooden tables where Eli sat with Max. Math worksheets lay scattered between them, covered in careful pencil marks and occasional eraser smudges. Eli watched as Max's forehead wrinkled in concentration, his pencil tapping against the paper as he worked through another problem. I just don't get it, Max sighed, dropping his pencil and slumping back in his chair. These fractions are impossible. Eli leaned forward, his voice gentle. Nothing's impossible, Max. Let's break it down into smaller pieces, just like we did with the shoe tying. Remember? A small smile tugged at Max's lips. That was different. That was easy. It wasn't easy at first, though, was it? Eli picked up the pencil and drew a circle on a blank piece of paper. See this circle? Think of it like a pizza. If we cut it into 4 equal pieces, what do we have? Max's eyes lit up. Quarters! Exactly. Now, if we want to add 2 quarters and 1 quarter, how many quarters do we have? 3 quarters? Max sat up straighter, his confidence growing. See? You're getting it already. Eli watched as Max tackled the next problem with renewed enthusiasm. These afternoon sessions had become a regular part of their routine over the past few weeks. What started as casual conversations had evolved into impromptu tutoring sessions, with Max seeking Eli out whenever he needed help with schoolwork or just wanted to talk. As Max worked through another problem, Eli noticed his shoulders gradually tensing, his movements becoming less sure. Something was bothering him, and Eli had learned to recognize the signs. Everything okay, buddy? Eli asked softly. Max set down his pencil again, this time more slowly. His eyes remained fixed on the paper. My dad used to help me with homework, he said quietly, before he went away. Eli's heart tightened in his chest. He knew this pain all too well, had seen it reflected in his own son's eyes countless times. Tell me about him, he encouraged gently. Max looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. He was really smart. He knew everything about space and planets. We used to look at the stars together. He paused, picking at the corner of his worksheet. Sometimes I forget what his voice sounded like. Eli reached across the table and placed his hand over Max's fidgeting fingers. That happens sometimes, he said. But you know what? The important things, the way he made you feel, the things he taught you, those stay with you. Really? Max's voice was barely above a whisper. Really? Eli smiled softly. My son Charlie, he was only 4 when his mom passed away. Sometimes he says he can't remember her face clearly anymore, but he remembers how she used to sing to him every night, and how safe he felt when she hugged him. Max nodded slowly, processing this information. Does Charlie still miss her? Every day, Eli answered honestly. And that's okay. Missing someone just means they meant a lot to us. It doesn't make us weak, it makes us human. Mom doesn't like to talk about Dad, Max confessed. I think it makes her sad. Sometimes I pretend I don't miss him so she won't feel bad. Eli felt his throat tighten. You don't have to pretend, Max. Being strong doesn't mean you can't feel sad sometimes. Real strength is being able to feel those feelings and still keep going. Like you do? Max asked, looking up at Eli with those earnest eyes that always seemed to see right through him. I try, Eli said. Some days are harder than others, but you know what helps? What? Having people around who understand. People you can talk to when you're feeling sad or scared. Eli gestured to the math problems. Or people who can help you figure out tricky fractions. A genuine smile spread across Max's face, and without warning, he stood up and walked around the table. Before Eli could react, Max's arms were wrapped around him in a tight hug. The sincerity of the gesture caught Eli off guard, and for a moment, he sat frozen, overwhelmed by the trust and affection in that simple action. Slowly, he brought his arms up to return the hug, careful and gentle. In that moment, something shifted inside him. A realization that these afternoon sessions had become more than just tutoring or casual conversation. They had become a lifeline for both of them, a chance to heal and grow stronger together. When Max finally pulled back, his eyes were clearer, more determined. Can we try those fractions again? Of course we can, Eli replied, his own voice slightly rough with emotion. As he watched Max return to his seat and pick up his pencil with renewed purpose, Eli felt a warmth spread through his chest. For the first time in years, he knew with absolute certainty that he was making a real difference in someone's life. Victoria Carter's heels clicked against the polished floor of the school hallway, echoing in the empty corridor. It was late afternoon, and most of the students had already gone home. She found Eli in his usual spot, methodically mopping the floor near the east wing entrance. Ellie? Her voice carried a mix of warmth and authority. Do you have a moment? Eli looked up from his work, noting how Victoria seemed different today, more formal in her dark business suit, her posture straighter than usual. Of course, Mrs. Carter. Please, it's Victoria. She smiled, gesturing toward the nearby bench. Would you mind if we sat down? I have something important to discuss with you. Eli propped his mop against the wall and followed her to the bench, maintaining a respectful distance as they sat. The late afternoon sun filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across their faces. I've been watching you these past few weeks, Victoria began, her hands clasped in her lap. The way you work, your dedication, and especially how you've connected with Max. She paused, meeting his eyes. I'm incredibly impressed, Eli. Thank you, he replied simply, unsure where this conversation was heading. Victoria reached into her leather briefcase and pulled out a sleek folder. I've been thinking about your potential, about what you could do with the right opportunity. She opened the folder, revealing several documents. I want to offer you a position at my company's headquarters. Eli's eyes widened slightly. I'm sorry? It's a facilities management position, she continued, her voice growing more animated. You'd be overseeing an entire team, managing the maintenance operations for our main office building. The hours are better. Regular 9 to 5, weekends off. She slid the folder toward him. And the salary. Well, take a look. Eli glanced at the number on the page and felt his breath catch. The figure was more than triple what he currently made. His mind immediately went to Charlie, to the possibility of finally being able to afford those science camp programs his son had been dreaming about. This is, he started, then fell silent, overwhelmed by the implications. I know it's a big change, Victoria acknowledged. But you're wasting your potential here, Eli. You have natural leadership abilities and you understand people. My company needs someone like you. Eli's fingers traced the edge of the folder. Where exactly is the headquarters? It's in Riverside Heights, Victoria replied. About 40 minutes from here. The weight of those words settled heavily in Eli's stomach. Riverside Heights might as well have been on another planet. It would mean leaving the school, leaving. What about Max? The words escaped before he could stop them. Victoria's expression softened. I've seen how close you two have become. But this opportunity, it could change your life, Eli. Give you and Charlie the security you deserve. Eli stared at the papers in front of him, his mind racing. The money would solve so many problems. No more lying awake at night wondering how to stretch his paycheck. No more putting off Charlie's dentist appointments. No more saying, maybe next time, when his son asked about new school supplies. But then he thought about Max's face lighting up every morning when they saw each other, about their conversations during lunch breaks, about the trust they'd built, the boy who had started opening up to him, sharing his fears and dreams, the child who looked at him with such hope in his eyes. Can I? Eli cleared his throat. Can I take some time to think about it? Victoria nodded, standing up. Of course. Take the weekend to consider it. But Eli? She paused, her hand resting briefly on his shoulder. Opportunities like this don't come along often. Sometimes we have to make hard choices for a better future. As Victoria's footsteps faded down the hallway, Eli remained seated, the folder heavy in his hands. The afternoon sun had shifted, throwing different shadows across the floor. He thought about Max, about their daily conversations, about the way the boy had started to flourish under his guidance. Would taking this job mean betraying that trust? Would Max understand, or would he see it as another adult choosing to leave him? But then Charlie's face floated into his mind. His son's eager eyes when talking about science experiments, his disappointed smile when Eli had to say no to another field trip because of money. As a father, wasn't it his duty to provide the best possible life for his child? Eli sat there, caught between two worlds. One offered financial security and professional growth, everything he'd worked for. The other held something equally valuable but harder to quantify, the connection he'd built with a young boy who needed him, the sense of purpose he'd found in their relationship. The empty hallway offered no answers as Eli struggled with the weight of Victoria's offer, knowing that whatever choice he made would irreversibly change not just his life, but the lives of those who had come to depend on him. The morning sun filtered through the windows of the school hallway, casting long shadows across the freshly mopped floor. Eli Turner leaned against his mop, his weathered hands gripping the wooden handle as his mind wandered to Victoria's offer from the previous day. The promotion would mean more money than he'd ever made before, enough to give Charlie the life he deserved, maybe even move to a better neighborhood. But something kept nagging at him, pulling at his heart whenever he thought about leaving. Eli glanced at the clock on the wall, knowing that in about 20 minutes, Max would come bouncing down these halls, probably with another story to share or question to ask. He pushed his cleaning cart toward the supply closet, his movements slower than usual. Every corner of this school held memories now. There was the drinking fountain where he'd first shown Max how to tie his shoes, the bulletin board where they'd spent an afternoon putting up new artwork together, the bench where they often sat during Max's lunch break, talking about everything and nothing. The sound of children's voices filled the hallway as the first bell rang. Eli watched as students filtered in, their backpacks bouncing, their morning chatter echoing off the walls. He noticed how different the school felt now compared to just a few months ago. Back then it had just been a job, a way to pay the bills. Now, it felt like so much more. "Morning, Mr. Turner," called out Mrs. Henderson, one of the third-grade teachers. She smiled warmly at him as she passed. "Morning," Eli replied, managing a small smile despite his troubled thoughts. He made his way to the cafeteria, where breakfast preparations were underway. The familiar routine helped ground him, but his mind kept drifting to Victoria's words. The position she'd offered would be in the corporate offices of her company, maintaining their facilities, overseeing a team of custodial staff. It was a real step up, with benefits and regular hours. "Better hours," Eli muttered to himself as he wiped down tables. "Better pay." But the words felt hollow in his mouth. The cafeteria slowly filled with students, and Eli kept one eye on the entrance, watching for Max. The boy usually came in around this time, often sitting alone with his breakfast. Today was no different. Max appeared in the doorway, his backpack looking almost too big for his small frame. Eli's heart clenched when he saw the boy's face light up upon spotting him. Max made his way over, carefully balancing his breakfast tray. "Hi, Mr. Turner," Max said, settling into his usual spot near where Eli was working. "Did you watch that space documentary I told you about?" Eli paused in his work, turning to face Max. "I did, buddy. Charlie and I watched it together last night. Those pictures of the galaxies were something else, weren't they?" Max nodded enthusiastically, taking a bite of his toast. "I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. Or maybe a janitor like you. I haven't decided yet." The innocent comment hit Eli hard. He forced a smile, but inside, his stomach churned. How could he explain to Max that he might not be around much longer? That he might take a job that would keep him from seeing Max every day? Being an astronaut would be pretty amazing, Eli said, his voice slightly hoarse. He busied himself with wiping down the next table, trying to hide the emotion on his face. Throughout the day, Eli found himself noticing all the little things he'd come to take for granted. The way Max would wave to him between classes. The proud smile on the boy's face when he showed Eli his latest art project. The quiet conversations they shared during lunch break. During his afternoon break, Eli sat alone in the maintenance room, holding a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. He pulled out his phone and looked at his banking app, at the numbers that never seemed big enough. The promotion would change all that. It would mean security, stability, a better future for Charlie. But as he stared at the screen, all he could see was Max's face, the boy who had somehow worked his way into his heart, who looked at him with such trust and admiration, the boy who needed him, maybe as much as his own son did. The afternoon sun was casting long shadows across the playground when Eli heard familiar footsteps approaching. He was checking the playground equipment, making sure everything was secure for tomorrow. "Mr. Turner?" Max's voice was quieter than usual. Eli turned to find Max standing there, his hands clutching the straps of his backpack. Something about his posture made Eli's heart sink. The boy looked smaller somehow, more vulnerable. "What's up, buddy?" Eli asked, trying to keep his voice light. Max scuffed his shoe against the ground, not meeting Eli's eyes. "Are you leaving?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken emotions. Eli's throat tightened. He hadn't told anyone about Victoria's offer except Charlie, and he wondered how Max had figured it out. Eli started, then stopped. He wanted to reassure Max, to tell him everything would be okay, but the words wouldn't come. How could he make promises he wasn't sure he could keep? "Tommy said he saw his mom talking to your boss about getting someone new to clean the school," Max continued, his voice wobbling slightly. "Are they making you go away?" Eli knelt down to Max's level, his knees protesting the movement. The boy's eyes were filled with a mixture of fear and sadness that made Eli's chest ache. "Nobody's making me go anywhere, Max," he said softly. It wasn't exactly a lie. This was his choice to make. But looking at Max's face, seeing the trust and hope there, Eli realized just how difficult this decision had become. Max nodded, but Eli could see he wasn't convinced. The boy's lower lip trembled slightly, and he clutched his backpack straps tighter. "You promise you'll tell me if you're going to leave?" Max asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Eli felt something crack inside his chest. He reached out and gently squeezed Max's shoulder, the way he often did with Charlie when his son was upset. "I promise, buddy. You'll be the first to know." Max gave him a small smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. As Eli watched him walk away toward the parking lot where his mother's car would be waiting, he felt the weight of his decision more heavily than ever before. The promotion, the money, the security, none of it seemed to matter as much as the trust in that little boy's eyes. He stood there long after Max had gone, watching the setting sun paint the playground equipment in shades of gold and orange. The decision he had thought would be simple, a clear step up in life, now felt impossibly complex. In his heart, he knew that whatever choice he made would change not just his life, but Max's as well. The afternoon bell had just rung, and the hallways were clearing as students rushed home. Eli was organizing his cleaning supplies in the maintenance closet when he heard the distinct click of heels against the linoleum floor. He knew those footsteps by now. "Eli?" Victoria's voice carried a hint of urgency. "Do you have a moment?" He turned to find her standing in the doorway, dressed in an elegant navy business suit that made her look both powerful and somehow vulnerable. Her usual confidence seemed slightly dimmed today, replaced by something more uncertain. "Of course," Eli said, closing the supply cabinet. "Is everything all right?" Victoria glanced around the empty hallway before stepping closer. "I wanted to talk about the position I offered you." She wrung her hands together, a gesture he'd never seen from her before. "Have you given it any thought?" Eli nodded slowly, buying time as he gathered his thoughts. "I have. I just need more time to—" "Time isn't something we have much of," Victoria interrupted, her voice softening. "The board needs an answer by the end of the week." She took another step closer, close enough that Eli could smell her expensive perfume. "I need an answer, Eli." He shifted uncomfortably, aware of how small the maintenance closet suddenly felt. "Mrs. Carter, Victoria," she corrected gently. "Please, Victoria," he amended. "It's a big decision. It would mean leaving behind everything I've built here." She looked at him intently, her eyes searching his face. "What you've built here is wonderful, Eli. The way you connect with the children, especially Max." Her voice caught slightly. "That's exactly why I need you." Eli felt his chest tighten at the mention of Max's name. "What do you mean?" Victoria's professional facade cracked slightly, revealing something raw underneath. "I've been watching you with him. The way you talk to him, guide him, teach him things. I never could." She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. "Do you know he smiled more in the past few weeks than he has in the last year?" The weight of her words settled heavy in Eli's stomach. He remembered Max's bright face when they'd worked together on his shoe tying, the pride in the boy's eyes when he'd mastered it. "I'm not just offering you a job, Eli," Victoria continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm asking for help. I'm drowning here." She pressed her lips together, composing herself. "Since Thomas died, I've tried to be everything for Max. Mother, father, provider, protector. But I'm failing him. I can see it every day." Eli's throat felt dry. "You're not failing him. You're doing your best." "My best isn't enough," she said, shaking her head. "I need someone who understands him. Someone who can reach him in ways I can't." Her eyes met his, filled with a mixture of hope and desperation. "I need you, Eli. Not just for the work, but..." She gestured helplessly. "I need someone to lean on. Someone who understands what it's like to raise a child alone." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as silence filled the space between them. Eli could feel the weight of her confession, the responsibility it carried. It wasn't just about a job anymore. It was about becoming part of their lives in a way he hadn't anticipated. "The position comes with everything you could want," Victoria pressed on. "Better pay, benefits, stability. You could give Charlie everything he deserves. And Max," she touched his arm lightly, "you could still be there for Max, maybe even more than you are now." Eli felt overwhelmed by the possibilities she was laying out, by the need in her voice. He thought about Charlie, about the better life he could provide. But then he thought about Max's words from the other day. "Mommy says you're my daddy." And the complexity of what Victoria was really asking hit him full force. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," he admitted quietly, looking down at his worn work boots. "It's not just about the job. What you're asking." He trailed off, unable to put into words the enormity of the situation. Victoria's hand fell away from his arm. "I understand it's a lot," she said softly. "But sometimes the biggest changes in our lives come when we least expect them, when we're least ready for them." Eli leaned back against the supply cabinet, feeling the cool metal through his uniform shirt. The bond he developed with Max was special, something he hadn't planned or expected. But Victoria's revelation about her own struggles, her need for support, added layers of complexity he wasn't sure he could handle. "I need time," he said finally, his voice rough. "This isn't just about a new job. It's about Max, about Charlie, about..." He gestured between them, unable to name the undefined something that had been growing there. Victoria nodded, composing herself. The vulnerable moment was passing, but Eli could still see traces of it in her eyes. "I understand," she said, smoothing her suit jacket. "But please don't take too long. We need you, Eli. Both of us do." She turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. "Just think about it. Think about all the good you could do, not just for yourself and Charlie, but for us too." Eli watched her walk away, her heels clicking against the floor until the sound faded into silence. He remained in the maintenance closet, surrounded by cleaning supplies and the lingering scent of her perfume, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him from all sides. The bond he shared with Max, the potential to help both the boy and his mother, the chance for a better life. It all swirled in his mind like leaves caught in a whirlwind. But with it came the fear of taking on such emotional responsibility, of potentially disappointing not just one child, but two, of disappointing Victoria, who had just laid her heart bare in a way he never expected. He closed his eyes, letting out a long breath. The simple life he'd known was slipping away, replaced by something far more complicated than he'd ever imagined. and he wasn't sure if he was ready to face it. The morning sun filtered through the school windows, casting long shadows across the empty hallways. Eli pushed his mop along the familiar path, his movements mechanical, his mind elsewhere. For the third day in a row, Max hadn't shown up for their usual morning chat before classes. The absence of the boy's cheerful voice and bright smile left an unexpected hollow feeling in Eli's chest. He paused near Max's classroom, remembering how the boy would usually be waiting there, ready to share stories about his weekend or show off a new drawing. During lunch break, Eli watched from his usual spot near the cafeteria entrance as Max sat alone at his table, picking at his food without his usual enthusiasm. When their eyes met briefly across the room, Max quickly looked away, hunching his shoulders as if trying to make himself smaller. "Hey, Mr. Turner." Mrs. Henderson, Max's teacher, approached him with concern etched on her face. "Is everything okay with Max? He's been unusually quiet in class lately. He's not participating like he used to." Eli's grip tightened on his mop handle. "I've noticed too," he admitted softly. "He hasn't been himself lately. He used to light up whenever he talked about spending time with you," she said. "Did something happen?" The question hit Eli like a physical blow. He thought about Victoria's job offer, about the way he'd been avoiding making a decision, about how his uncertainty must have shown in his interactions with Max. Throughout the day, Eli caught glimpses of Max in the hallways. Each time, the boy would duck his head or turn away, his small shoulders tense. The sight made Eli's heart ache. He remembered how Max used to run up to him, eager to share every little detail of his day. During the afternoon recess, Eli watched from the window as Max sat alone on the playground bench, absent-mindedly scuffing his shoes in the dirt. Other children played and laughed around him, but Max remained in his own little world, isolated by invisible walls of hurt. Finally, as the last bell rang and students began flooding the hallways, Eli made his decision. He couldn't let this continue. He found Max at his locker, slowly putting his books away while other kids rushed past him. "Max?" Eli approached carefully, keeping his voice gentle. "Can we talk for a minute?" Max froze, his hands still on his backpack strap. For a moment, Eli thought he might run away, but then the boy gave a tiny nod. "Want to help me clean the art room?" Eli asked, remembering how Max used to love helping him organize the paint supplies. They walked to the art room in silence, the tension between them almost visible. Inside, Eli began straightening the easels, while Max stood awkwardly by the door, his eyes fixed on the floor. "I've missed seeing you around," Eli said softly, setting down a paintbrush. "Been pretty quiet without my favorite helper." Max's lower lip trembled slightly. "You're going to leave anyway," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "just like Dad did." The words hit Eli like a punch to the gut. He set down his cleaning supplies and knelt in front of Max, trying to meet his eyes. "Max, look at me, buddy!" Max raised his head slowly, and Eli saw the tears gathering in his eyes. "Mom said you might get a new job," Max continued, his voice shaking. "That means you won't be here anymore, just like Dad wasn't there anymore." "Oh, Max." Eli's heart broke at the pain in the boy's voice. "Is that why you've been avoiding me?" Max nodded, a tear finally escaping down his cheek. "If I don't see you anymore, then it won't hurt so much when you go away." Eli reached out and gently wiped away Max's tear with his thumb. "I understand why you're scared," he said softly. "Losing someone you care about is one of the hardest things in the world. I know that feeling too well." Max sniffled. "You do?" "Yes, I do. When I lost my wife, Charlie's mom, it hurt so much that sometimes I wanted to hide away from everyone too." Eli paused, choosing his words carefully. "But you know what I learned? Pushing people away doesn't make the hurt less. It just makes us feel more alone." "But you're still going to leave," Max insisted, his voice breaking. "Everyone always leaves." Eli felt his own eyes growing wet. "Max, listen to me. No matter what happens with any job, no matter where I am, I will always be here for you. Always. You've become very special to me, buddy. You know that, right?" Max's lower lip quivered again. "Promise?" Eli opened his arms, and Max fell into them, burying his face in Eli's shoulder. "I promise," Eli whispered, holding the boy close. "I promise I won't disappear from your life." As he held Max, though, Eli felt the weight of his uncertainty pressing down on him. The job offer from Victoria still loomed large in his mind, and he wasn't sure how he could keep his promise if he took it. But looking at the small boy in his arms, feeling Max's trust in him, Eli knew he had to find a way. He had to figure out how to be there for Max, no matter what decision he made. They stayed like that for a while, until Max's sniffles subsided. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were red but clearer. "Can I help you clean up now?" he asked quietly. "I'd like that very much," Eli replied, standing up and ruffling Max's hair. "How about we start with organizing these paintbrushes?" As they worked together, some of the old warmth returned between them, but Eli could still feel the undercurrent of uncertainty. He watched Max carefully sort the brushes by size, just as Eli had taught him weeks ago, and wondered how he could possibly make a decision that wouldn't break this fragile trust they'd built. The early morning darkness blanketed Eli's small kitchen as he sat at the worn wooden table, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. He hadn't slept much, his mind replaying memories of the past few months like an old film reel. Max's bright smile when he'd learned to tie his shoes, their quiet conversations during lunch breaks, and the way the boy's eyes lit up whenever Eli taught him something new. Charlie's bedroom door creaked open, and his son shuffled into the kitchen, still in his pajamas. "Dad, you're up early." Eli managed a tired smile. "Just thinking, buddy." Charlie grabbed a bowl from the cabinet and poured himself some cereal. "About Miss Victoria's offer?" "Yeah." Eli watched his son, remembering how he'd promised himself after his wife's passing that he'd always put their boy first. Now, here he was, making another promise, this time to a different child who needed him just as much. "You know, sometimes the right choice isn't the easiest one." Charlie nodded, understanding beyond his years. "Is this about Max?" "Partly." Eli stood up and rinsed his coffee cup in the sink. "He reminds me a lot of you after we lost Mom. Sometimes kids just need someone to be there for them." The drive to school was quiet that morning, the sun barely peeking over the horizon. Eli dropped Charlie off at the middle school before heading to his own workplace. His mind made up, but his heart still heavy with the weight of what he had to do. Victoria was already waiting in her usual spot near the administration office when he arrived. She wore an elegant navy blue suit, her presence as commanding as ever. But today Eli saw past the polished exterior to the worried mother underneath. "Good morning, Eli," she said, her voice hopeful. "Have you given more thought to our discussion?" Eli nodded, straightening his shoulders. "I have, Miss Carter, and I need to tell you something important." They walked to a quiet corner of the hallway, away from the early morning bustle of arriving teachers. Victoria's heels clicked against the linoleum floor, the sound echoing in the empty space. "I'm grateful for the opportunity," Eli began, his voice steady, despite his nervousness. "The promotion, the better pay. It's more than generous, but I can't accept it." Victoria's expression shifted, surprise and disappointment crossing her features. "May I ask why?" Eli glanced down the hallway where he'd first met Max, remembering the small boy struggling with his shoelaces. "Because sometimes the most important work we do isn't about the money we make or the title we hold. It's about the lives we touch." "This is about Max, isn't it?" Victoria's voice softened. "It's about all of them." Eli gestured to the school around them. "These kids, they need stability. They need to know that some things and some people won't change just because there's a better offer somewhere else." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Max especially needs that right now." Victoria's eyes glistened with unexpected tears. "He's different when he's around you, you know. Happier, more confident. That's exactly why I can't leave." Eli's voice grew stronger with conviction. "Your son is an amazing kid, Miss Carter. He's smart, kind, and has so much potential. But right now, he needs more than just a better-paying job for his mom's friend. He needs someone who can be there for him, right here, where he is." Victoria dabbed at her eyes with a tissue from her designer purse. "I've been so focused on providing for him financially, I sometimes forget what he needs emotionally." "You're doing your best," Eli assured her. "Being a single parent isn't easy. I know that firsthand." The first bell rang, signaling the start of the school day. Students began filling the hallways, their voices and footsteps creating a familiar morning symphony. "I understand," Victoria said finally, her composure returning. "And I respect your decision, Eli. The position will remain open if you change your mind." "Thank you," Eli replied, genuine gratitude in his voice. "But I know I'm where I need to be." As Victoria walked away, Eli spotted Max hovering near his classroom door, watching them with uncertain eyes. The boy had been more withdrawn lately, the fear of losing another important person in his life weighing heavily on his young shoulders. Eli approached him slowly, kneeling down to meet Max's eyes. "Hey buddy, got a minute to talk?" Max nodded, his fingers fidgeting with the straps of his backpack. "Are you leaving, Mr. Turner?" "No, Max. I'm not going anywhere." The words came easily now, feeling right in every way. "This is where I belong." The change in Max's expression was immediate and profound. His eyes widened, hope replacing the worry that had clouded them for days. "Really? You're staying?" "Really?" Eli smiled, warmth spreading through his chest at the boy's joy. "Someone's got to make sure these floors stay clean, right? And more importantly, someone's got to be here to remind a certain young man how special he is." Max's face broke into the brightest smile Eli had seen in days. Without warning, the boy threw his arms around Eli's neck in a tight hug. "Thank you, Mr. Turner. Thank you for staying." Eli returned the hug, his own eyes growing misty. In that moment, he knew without a doubt that he'd made the right choice. No amount of money could replace the feeling of making a difference in a child's life, of being the steady presence they could count on. The second bell rang, and Max pulled back, wiping his eyes quickly. "I better get to class." "Go on," Eli said, standing up. "And Max, I'll see you at lunch, okay?" Max nodded enthusiastically, practically bouncing as he headed into his classroom. Eli watched him go, feeling lighter than he had in days. He picked up his mop from where he'd left it leaning against the wall, ready to start another day of honest work that meant so much more than just keeping the school clean. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the school hallway windows as Eli finished mopping the last section of the floor. His muscles ached from the day's work, but his mind felt clearer than it had in weeks. The weight of his decision still pressed against his chest, but he knew in his heart it was right. The click of heels against the polished floor made him look up. Victoria stood at the end of the hallway, her usual confident posture somewhat subdued. She wore a navy business suit, but her expression was softer than usual, missing its typical sharp edge. "I had a feeling I'd find you here," she said, walking toward him. Her voice carried a hint of resignation, but there was something else there too. Respect, perhaps. Eli leaned the mop against the wall. "Victoria, She held up a hand, stopping him. "Before you say anything, I want you to know that I understand." She moved to one of the wooden benches lining the hallway and sat down, smoothing her skirt. "Would you join me for a moment?" Eli hesitated, then sat beside her, leaving enough space between them to remain professional. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, creating patterns on the floor they both watched in silence. "You know," Victoria began, her voice quiet, "when I first saw you with Max that morning, teaching him to tie his shoes, I thought I'd found the perfect solution." She smiled slightly, her eyes distant. "A kind man who could help both my company and my son." Eli nodded, remembering that first morning. "I was just doing what felt right." "That's exactly it, Eli." Victoria turned to face him. "You always do what feels right. Not what's most profitable or prestigious, but what's right." Her hands clasped together in her lap. "I respect that more than you know." The silence between them felt comfortable now, different from the tension-filled pauses of their previous conversations. A paper airplane sailed through the hallway, followed by a child's laughter from a nearby classroom. "Max needs stability," Eli said finally. "He needs to know that the people he counts on won't disappear." He looked at Victoria directly. "I couldn't take that job, no matter how generous the offer." Victoria's eyes glistened slightly. "I know. And that's precisely why you would have been perfect for it." She laughed softly, wiping at her eyes. "But you're more valuable right here, aren't you? To Max? To the other children? To this school? I hope you can understand," Eli said, his voice gentle. "It's not about the money or the position. It's about being where you're needed most," Victoria finished for him. She reached over and patted his hand briefly. "You're a good man, Eli Turner. Better than most." The afternoon light had shifted, casting longer shadows now. A gentle breeze carried the sound of children playing outside during their last recess of the day. "I was worried," Eli admitted, "that you might be angry." Victoria shook her head, a genuine smile touching her lips. "Disappointed, yes. But angry? No." She straightened her jacket. you've taught me something important actually. About priorities. About what really matters. The sound of Max's laughter drifted in from the playground, and they both turned toward it instinctively. Victoria's expression softened further. He's different now, she said. Happier, more confident. That's because of you. Eli felt his throat tighten with emotion. He's a good kid. He just needs someone to believe in him. Victoria stood up, smoothing her suit. Which is exactly why you need to stay. She turned to face him, her professional demeanor returning. But her eyes remained warm. Just because you're not taking the job doesn't mean we can't be friends, Eli. You've become important to both Max and me. I'd like that, Eli replied, standing as well. Max doesn't need to lose another connection in his life. Neither do I, Victoria added softly. She extended her hand, but instead of the formal handshake Eli expected, she squeezed his hand warmly. Thank you, Eli, for showing me what real integrity looks like. They stood there for a moment, the afternoon sun warming their faces through the windows, both understanding that while one door had closed, another had opened. One that might lead to something more meaningful than any business arrangement could offer. The early morning sunlight streamed through the classroom windows, casting a warm glow across the desks. Eli was finishing up his morning cleaning routine when he heard familiar footsteps rushing down the hallway. A smile tugged at his lips before he even turned around. Mr. Turner! Mr. Turner! Max burst into the classroom, clutching a paper in his hand. His eyes sparkled with excitement, and his usual neat appearance was slightly disheveled from running. Look what I got on my math test. Eli set down his cleaning supplies and knelt to Max's level, a habit he'd developed over their time together. The boy thrust the paper forward, revealing a bright red A+ at the top of the page. Would you look at that? Eli's voice carried genuine pride. I knew you could do it, buddy. All that hard work paid off, didn't it? Max nodded enthusiastically. Remember how you taught me to check my work twice? I did that on every problem, just like you showed me. Eli reached out and ruffled Max's hair. That's exactly right. Being careful and double-checking, those are habits that'll serve you well your whole life. The classroom door opened again, and Mrs. Thompson, Max's teacher, stepped in. She smiled warmly at the pair. Max has been showing everyone his test score. He's made remarkable progress these past few weeks. Max's chest puffed up with pride, but he quickly looked to Eli. It's because Mr. Turner helped me. He showed me how to break down the problems into smaller pieces. Mrs. Thompson's eyes met Eli's. Well, whatever you're doing, Mr. Turner, it's working. Max's participation in class has improved tremendously, too. After Mrs. Thompson left, Max pulled out his lunch bag. It had become their routine to share lunch whenever possible, with Eli taking his break to sit with the boy. Today, Max had brought extra cookies to share. I made these with Mom last night, Max said, offering one to Eli. She's been spending more time with me in the evenings now. We even played board games yesterday. Eli's heart warmed at this news. He'd noticed the subtle changes in Max over the past weeks, the way he carried himself with more confidence, how he'd started making friends with his classmates instead of sitting alone at recess. During lunch, Max chatted about his upcoming science project. His eyes lit up as he described his plans to build a model of the solar system. Could you help me with it, Mr. Turner? Mom said she'd buy all the supplies, but I want it to be really good. Of course I'll help, Eli replied, watching as Max's face broke into a wide grin. We can work on it after school if your mom says it's okay. Later that afternoon during recess, Eli watched from the window as Max played basketball with a group of boys from his class. Just a few weeks ago, Max would have been sitting alone with a book. Now, he was laughing and running, completely engaged with his peers. A small group of children called out to Max, inviting him to join their game of tag. Without hesitation, Max waved goodbye to his basketball friends and joined the new group. Eli couldn't help but smile, remembering how shy and hesitant Max had been when they first met. After school, Max waited for Eli to finish his work, sitting quietly at a desk and working on his homework. The comfortable silence between them spoke volumes about how far they'd come. Mr. Turner? Max asked, looking up from his work. Can I tell you something? Always, buddy. Before I met you, I used to hate coming to school. Max fidgeted with his pencil. I felt like I couldn't do anything right, and nobody really noticed me. But now, he paused, gathering his thoughts. Now, I look forward to it every day. Eli stopped what he was doing and sat down across from Max. You know what makes me proud? It's not just your grades or that you're making friends. It's seeing you believe in yourself." Max's eyes welled up slightly. "Thank you, Mr. Turner. For everything. For teaching me about shoes and math and being kind to others." He wiped his eyes quickly with his sleeve. "You make everything seem less scary." Eli felt his own eyes growing misty. He looked at this young boy who had somehow worked his way into his heart, and he realized something profound. In trying to help Max find his way, he had found something himself, a purpose that went beyond simply earning a living. The afternoon light painted the classroom in soft golden hues as Max packed up his belongings. He stopped at the door and turned back to Eli. "See you tomorrow, Mr. Turner." His voice was bright with confidence and anticipation. Eli smiled, his heart full. "See you tomorrow, buddy." As he watched Max walk down the hallway to meet his mother, Eli felt a deep sense of contentment wash over him. His life had taken on new meaning, not through grand gestures or important titles, but through simple moments of connection and care. In helping Max grow, he had found something he never knew he was missing. The small coffee shop buzzed with quiet conversation as evening settled over the city. Eli sat at a corner table, his weathered hands wrapped around a steaming cup of black coffee. The familiar scent reminded him of early mornings at the school, but the setting was different, more intimate, more uncertain. Victoria walked in, her business attire traded for casual wear, a simple sweater and jeans that made her seem more approachable. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, and without her usual professional facade, she looked younger, more vulnerable. She spotted Eli and gave a small wave before ordering her drink. "Thank you for meeting me," Victoria said as she slid into the seat across from him. She set down her cappuccino, a delicate swirl of foam on top. "I know it's been a long day." Eli nodded, his fingers tapping gently against his cup. "No problem at all. Is everything okay with Max?" Victoria's face softened at the mention of her son's name. "Actually, that's what I wanted to talk about." She took a careful sip of her drink, gathering her thoughts. "I've noticed such a change in him lately. The way he carries himself, his enthusiasm for school. It's like he's becoming a different person." Eli shifted in his seat, uncomfortable with the praise he could hear in her voice. "He's a good kid. Always has been." "Yes, but now he's showing it more." Victoria leaned forward, her eyes bright with emotion.
"Do you know what he did yesterday?"
He helped Sarah, his classmate, pick up her books when she dropped them. Before, he would have just walked past, too shy to get involved. A warm feeling spread through Eli's chest. He remembered teaching Max about looking out for others, about how small acts of kindness could make a big difference. "That's great to hear." "It's more than great," Victoria said, her voice thick with gratitude. "Max has started talking to me more too. Actually talking. About his day, his feelings, things he's learning." She paused, blinking rapidly. "He told me about the chalkboard cleaning lessons you gave him." Eli remembered that afternoon clearly. Max's determined face as he learned the proper way to clean the board, his pride in doing something helpful. He's a quick learner. "It's not just about learning to clean chalkboards, though, is it?" Victoria's eyes met his. "You're teaching him about responsibility, about taking pride in what he does. These are things I've tried to show him, but..." She trailed off, looking down at her cup. "Sometimes kids need to hear it from someone else," Eli offered gently. "It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong." Victoria nodded, a sad smile playing at her lips. "After his father died, I threw myself into work. I thought if I could just be successful enough, provide enough, it would make up for everything else Max was missing." She traced the rim of her cup with her finger. "I was wrong." The coffee shop's quiet murmur filled the silence between them. Through the window, Eli watched as people hurried past, heading home after long days at work. He thought about his own son, Charlie, and how different things had been after losing his wife. "What Max needed wasn't more things," Victoria continued, her voice steady now. "He needed someone to see him, to spend time with him, to show him that he matters." She looked up at Eli, her eyes shining. "You've given him that. You've shown him what it means to be a good person, not just through words, but through actions." Eli felt his throat tighten. "I just treat him the way any kid deserves to be treated." "But that's just it. You treat him like he matters, like his thoughts and feelings are important." Victoria reached across the table, briefly touching Eli's hand. "Do you know he talks about you at home? About how you always listen to him, how you make him feel brave." The warmth in Eli's chest grew stronger. He thought about all the moments with Max, teaching him to tie his shoes, showing him how to solve math problems, listening to his stories about school. Somewhere along the way, what had started as simple kindness had grown into something deeper. "I never expected this," Eli admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "When I first helped him with his shoelaces, I was just doing what anyone would do. I never thought." He paused, searching for the right words. "I never expected to care so much about someone else's child." Victoria's eyes softened with understanding. "But you do care about him." "Yeah," Eli said quietly. "I do, and I'm grateful for that. Grateful for the chance to be part of his life." The confession hung in the air between them, honest and unadorned. Through the window, the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in soft oranges and pinks, casting a warm glow over their quiet corner of the coffee shop. Victoria smiled, and for the first time since Eli had known her, it reached her eyes completely. "We're the ones who are grateful, Eli, more than you could know." The coffee shop's warm lights cast a gentle glow over their corner table. Victoria stirred her latte, the silver spoon clinking softly against the ceramic cup. Her shoulders were relaxed, different from her usual rigid posture at school. Eli noticed the change in her demeanor. She seemed more approachable, more human. "I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation," Victoria began, her voice soft but clear. "About the position I offered you." Eli's hands tightened slightly around his coffee cup. He'd known this was coming, but his heart felt steady now, unlike the turmoil he'd experienced during their previous discussions. "The offer still stands," she continued, reaching into her bag and pulling out a folder. "I've actually revised it. Better benefits, more flexibility with hours." She slid the folder across the table. "And the salary, well, it would change your life, Eli. You and Charlie could have everything you've ever wanted." Eli looked at the folder, but didn't touch it. Instead, he watched the steam rise from his coffee, gathering his thoughts. The old uncertainty that had plagued him before was gone, replaced by a calm certainty. "You know, Victoria," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "when my wife passed away, I thought my whole world had ended. The only thing that kept me going was Charlie." He paused, taking a slow breath. "But lately I've realized something important. What I do at the school, it's not just a job anymore." Victoria leaned forward, her eyes soft with understanding. "I know. I've seen how the children respond to you, especially Max." "Max," Eli smiled, the boy's name bringing warmth to his expression. "That boy has taught me more about myself than I ever expected. When I first met him, I thought I was just helping a kid tie his shoes, but it was more than that." "He adores you," Victoria admitted, her voice catching slightly. "I've never seen him connect with anyone the way he connects with you." Eli nodded, thinking about all the moments he'd shared with Max, teaching him small life lessons, listening to his stories, watching his confidence grow. "That's exactly why I can't take the promotion, Victoria. What I've found at the school, the difference I can make in these kids' lives, it's worth more than any paycheck." Victoria's eyes widened slightly. "But think about what you could do with this opportunity, the security it would provide for Charlie." "Charlie's doing just fine," Eli said, his voice warm with pride. "And he understands something I'm just learning myself, that real wealth isn't about money, it's about purpose." He pushed the folder back across the table, gently but decisively. "Every morning, when I walk into that school, I know exactly why I'm there. When Max comes to talk to me about his day, or when any of the kids need someone to listen, that's my purpose. I can't walk away from that." Victoria sat back, studying him with new eyes. The businesslike facade she usually wore had completely melted away, replaced by something more vulnerable, more real. "You've really thought this through, haven't you?" she said softly. "I have," Eli confirmed. "And I want you to know how much I appreciate the offer. It means a lot that you see something in me worth investing in, but the truth is, I'm already invested in something I can't walk away from." A moment of silence passed between them. Outside, the evening traffic hummed quietly, and somewhere in the coffee shop, a barista called out an order. But at their table, something profound was settling into place. "You know," Victoria said finally, a small smile playing at her lips, I think I understand now why Max looks up to you so much. You have a way of seeing what really matters." Eli felt his chest tighten with emotion. He's a special kid, Victoria. They all are. And being there for them, it's not just a job. It's who I am now. Victoria reached across the table and squeezed his hand briefly. "I respect that, Eli, more than you know." She took the folder and slipped it back into her bag. "And I'm glad Max has someone like you in his life." As they sat there, the tension that had been building over the past weeks finally dissolved. Eli felt the rightness of his decision settle into his bones. The path ahead was clear now, not because it promised wealth or status, but because it led right back to where he belonged, in those school hallways, making a difference one small moment at a time. "Would you like another coffee?" Victoria asked, gesturing to his empty cup. "I should probably head home," Eli replied. "Early morning tomorrow. Those hallways won't clean themselves." Victoria smiled, and this time it reached her eyes completely. "No, I suppose they won't." She stood up, gathering her things. "Thank you, Eli, not just for being honest with me, but for being there for Max. For all of them." Eli nodded, feeling completely at peace with his choice. The weight of uncertainty that had been pressing on his shoulders was gone, replaced by the comfortable certainty of knowing exactly where he belonged and why. The evening had grown darker outside the coffee shop windows, but Eli's path had never been clearer. He'd chosen purpose over profit, connection over comfort, and somehow, that made him feel richer than any promotion ever could. The school gymnasium buzzed with excitement as parents and teachers filed in for the annual achievement assembly. Rows of metal folding chairs creaked under the weight of proud families, while students fidgeted in their seats near the front. Eli stood at the back, leaning against the wall in his usual spot, his worn work boots planted firmly on the polished floor. His eyes were fixed on Max, who sat in the front row, clutching a piece of paper that trembled slightly in his hands. The boy kept turning around, scanning the crowd until he spotted Eli. When their eyes met, Eli gave him a reassuring nod and a gentle smile. Max's shoulders relaxed a bit, and he turned back around, sitting up straighter. Principal Stevens approached the microphone, tapping it twice before speaking. "Good morning, everyone. Today, we're here to celebrate our students' achievements." Her voice echoed through the gymnasium. "But before we begin with the awards, we have a special presentation from one of our students. Max Carter has been chosen to speak about what makes our school community special." A ripple of polite applause filled the room. Eli noticed Victoria sitting in the front row, her designer suit standing out among the casual attire of other parents. She was actually present for once, having cleared her schedule for this important moment in her son's life. Max stood up slowly, his small frame looking even tinier as he approached the podium. Principal Stevens adjusted the microphone down to his height. The paper in his hands shook more noticeably now, but Max took a deep breath, just like Eli had taught him when he was nervous. "Good morning," Max began, his voice quiet at first, but growing stronger with each word. "When Principal Stevens asked me to talk about what makes our school special, I thought about all the usual things, like our great teachers and fun field trips." He paused, looking up from his paper to scan the crowd. "But what really makes this school special isn't just what we learn in class. It's about the people who make us feel safe and cared for, even when we're having a bad day." Eli felt his throat tighten as Max continued. "Sometimes the most important lessons come from people we least expect. For me, that person is Mr. Turner, our janitor." Max's voice grew more confident as he spoke. "Most people just see him cleaning the halls or fixing things, but he's more than that. He's the person who taught me how to tie my shoes when I was struggling." Victoria shifted in her seat, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Several teachers exchanged knowing glances, smiling softly. "Mr. Turner showed me that it's okay to ask for help when you need it. He taught me that being kind is more important than being important." Max's voice carried clearly through the gymnasium now. "When I was having trouble with math, he didn't just tell me to try harder. He sat with me during his lunch break and helped me understand it better." Eli's chest swelled with emotion as he listened. He remembered those lunch breaks, sharing his sandwich with Max while they worked through multiplication tables together. "But the biggest thing Mr. Turner taught me wasn't about school stuff at all. He showed me that sometimes the strongest people are the quietest ones, the ones who help others without wanting anything back." Max's voice wavered slightly. "He taught me that real strength isn't about being tough or rich or powerful. It's about being there for others and doing what's right, even when it's hard. Teachers wiped away tears, and parents leaned forward in their chairs, caught up in the honest words of this young boy. Every morning, Mr. Turner makes sure our school is clean and safe. But he does more than that. He remembers everyone's name. He asks how we're doing, and really listens to the answer. When Tommy dropped his lunch tray last week, Mr. Turner didn't just clean it up, he shared his own lunch with him. Eli remembered that day clearly. He'd given Tommy his apple and half his sandwich, telling him stories about his own clumsy moments, until the boy stopped crying. Some people might think being a janitor isn't an important job, Max continued, his voice growing stronger with conviction. But Mr. Turner taught me that every job is important if you do it with kindness and pride. He taught me that what matters isn't what you do, but how you treat others while you're doing it. The gymnasium had grown completely silent, every person hanging on Max's words. Even the youngest student sat still, captivated by the sincerity in his voice. So when I think about what makes our school special, I think about Mr. Turner. I think about how he shows up every day with a smile, how he makes time for anyone who needs help, and how he taught me that the most important things in life aren't things at all. They're the ways we help each other. Max looked directly at Eli now, his eyes bright with emotion. Thank you, Mr. Turner, for teaching me these lessons. Thank you for showing me that one person can make a difference just by being kind. And thank you for being there when I needed someone to talk to. The boy's voice grew softer, more personal. You made me feel like I mattered when I felt invisible. You helped me be brave when I was scared. You showed me that it's okay to be myself, even when that feels hard. Eli pressed his hand against the wall behind him, steadying himself as waves of emotion washed over him. He could feel tears forming in his eyes, but he didn't try to hide them. So yes, our school is special because of our teachers and our classes and our field trips, Max concluded, standing straighter now, confidence radiating from his small frame. But it's most special because of people like Mr. Turner, who make everyone feel like they belong here. Thank you. The gymnasium erupted in applause. People stood up, their clapping echoing off the walls. Victoria was openly crying now, her usual composed demeanor forgotten as she watched her son shine with newfound confidence. Through his own tears, Eli watched Max step down from the podium, head held high. The boy had grown so much, not just in height, but in spirit and character. Gone was the shy child who couldn't tie his shoes. In his place stood a young man who understood the true meaning of strength and kindness. As the applause continued, Eli stayed in his spot against the wall, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. This moment, this genuine expression of love and gratitude, meant more to him than any promotion or paycheck ever could. In Max's words, he heard the echo of every small kindness, every shared moment, every quiet lesson that had passed between them. The morning sun cast long shadows across the school grounds as Eli Turner made his way through the familiar paths. The air was crisp, carrying the sweet scent of freshly cut grass and early spring flowers. He paused by the old oak tree, where he'd first seen Max sitting alone during recess months ago. His weathered hands brushed against the rough bark, remembering how that small boy had changed his life. The morning dew still clung to the grass, dampening the hem of his work pants as he walked. But Eli didn't mind. These quiet moments before the school came alive were his favorite time to think. He made his way to the playground, where the swings swayed gently in the morning breeze. Max loved these swings. Eli smiled, remembering how the boy's face would light up when they'd spend time here during breaks. He taught Max how to pump his legs to swing higher, something no one had ever shown him before. The memory of Max's first successful attempt brought warmth to Eli's chest. The pure joy in the boy's laughter, the way he'd shouted, "Look, Mr. Turner, I'm doing it!" Those moments were worth more than any promotion could offer. Eli continued his walk, passing the basketball court where he'd watched Max slowly come out of his shell. At first, the boy would stand at the edges, watching other kids play. But with gentle encouragement and a few casual shooting lessons during quiet afternoons, Max had found the courage to join in. Now he was often the first one picked for teams during recess. The morning light caught the windows of the school building, making them gleam like gold. Eli remembered Victoria's offer, the promise of better pay, a more prestigious position, a chance at a different life. The money would have made things easier, no doubt about that. His old truck could use replacing, and Charlie could use new clothes for the coming school year. But as he walked past the spot where he'd first helped Max tie his shoelaces, Eli knew in his heart that he'd made the right choice. That simple act of kindness had opened a door he never expected to walk through. He'd seen something of himself in Max's eyes that day. The same loneliness he'd felt after losing his wife. The same quiet strength that came from carrying on despite the pain. Near the flower beds he maintained, Eli stopped to pull a few weeds. His hands moved automatically, knowing every inch of these grounds like the lines on his palm. He'd watched Max help him plant these same flowers, the boy's small hands carefully patting the soil around each seedling. Max had been so proud when the first blooms appeared, running to show his mother the flowers he'd helped grow. Victoria had changed too, Eli reflected. He remembered their conversations, how she'd slowly opened up about her own struggles, the way she'd watched him with Max, learning from their interactions. She was trying harder now, spending more time with her son, learning to balance her work with Max's needs. The morning bell would ring soon, bringing with it the usual rush of students and teachers. But for now, Eli savored the quiet. He thought about Charlie, his own son, and how watching Max had made him a better father. He'd learned patience from teaching Max, found joy in the simple act of being present, of listening without judgment. Making his way back toward the school entrance, Eli passed the cafeteria windows. He remembered countless lunch breaks spent sharing sandwiches with Max, teaching him small life lessons between bites. The boy soaked up every word, every story, every bit of wisdom Eli could offer. It wasn't just Max who'd grown, though. Eli had learned just as much from their time together. The janitor's closet, his home base for so many years, stood at the end of the hallway. Inside were the tools of his trade, mops, brooms, cleaning supplies, but also the drawings Max had given him, carefully tacked to the inside of the door. Each one was a treasure, a reminder of why he'd chosen to stay. Eli's footsteps echoed in the empty corridor as he approached his closet. He could have been wearing a suit by now, sitting in an office somewhere across town. He could have been earning more money, living what others might consider a better life. But as he unlocked the door and reached for his work vest, Eli knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he needed to be. The first students would be arriving soon, their voices and laughter filling these quiet halls. Max would be among them, probably stopping by to say good morning as he always did. Eli would be here, ready with a smile and a kind word, continuing the work that had become so much more than just a job. As he prepared for another day, Eli felt a deep sense of contentment settle over him. The school was more than just his workplace now. It was where he'd found a new purpose, where he'd helped a lonely boy find his confidence, and where he'd discovered that sometimes the richest rewards come from the simplest acts of kindness. Eli smiled to himself as he heard the first cars pulling into the parking lot. He'd made the right choice staying here, and that knowledge filled him with a quiet joy that no amount of money could match. The morning sun streamed through the classroom windows, casting warm patches of light across the empty desks. Eli moved methodically through the room, wiping down surfaces and straightening chairs. The familiar routine brought him comfort, but his mind wandered to the changes that had taken place over the past months. Max appeared in the doorway, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He had started coming early to school, knowing he'd find Eli here. Today, something about his expression was different, more thoughtful, more settled. "Good morning, Mr. Turner," Max said, dropping his backpack by his usual desk. His voice carried a hint of excitement, like he had something important to share. Eli set down his cleaning cloth. "Morning, Max. You're here early again." He smiled warmly at the boy who had become such a constant presence in his life. Max pulled out a piece of paper from his pocket, carefully unfolding it. "I drew something in art class yesterday." He smoothed the paper on a nearby desk, revealing a colorful drawing of several stick figures. Eli moved closer to look. "Tell me about it." "Well, this is me." Max pointed to a small figure in the middle. "And this is Mom." He indicated a taller figure wearing what appeared to be a business suit. "And this." He paused, his finger hovering over another figure holding what looked like a mop. "This is you." Eli's throat tightened as he studied the drawing. The three figures were holding hands, surrounded by hearts and stars. "My teacher asked us to draw our family," Max continued, his voice growing softer. "I used to hate this assignment. Last year I just drew me and Mom, but it felt empty." He traced the outline of the figures with his finger. But this year, it's different. Eli pulled up a chair and sat next to Max, their shoulders nearly touching. Different how? Max took a deep breath, as if gathering his courage. I always wanted a dad. After my real dad died, I thought that's what families were supposed to be. A mom and a dad and kids. But now I know that's not true. He looked up at Eli, his eyes bright with understanding. Families can be different. They can be whatever makes you feel whole. The words hit Eli like a physical force, making his chest tight with emotion. He remembered his own struggles after losing his wife, trying to figure out what family meant when pieces were missing. That's very wise, Max, Eli managed, his voice rough with feeling. You know what else? Max continued, gaining confidence. Tommy in my class has 2 moms. Sarah lives with her grandparents. And me, he smiled. I have a mom who works really hard, and I have you, Mr. Turner. You're not my dad, but you're special too. Eli had to clear his throat before he could speak. You're right, Max. Families do come in all shapes and sizes. What matters is having people who care about you. Like how you care about me? Max asked, his voice small but sure. Exactly like that, Eli confirmed, resting a gentle hand on Max's shoulder. Max leaned into the touch slightly. Sometimes I still miss my dad. Is that okay? Of course it is, Eli assured him. Missing someone you love is natural. It means they mattered to you. But it doesn't hurt as much anymore, Max said thoughtfully. Not since you started teaching me things and listening to me. It's like, he paused, searching for the right words. It's like my heart had a big hole in it. But now, it's getting filled up with new, good things. Eli watched as Max carefully folded his drawing and tucked it back into his pocket. The boy's words echoed in his mind, reminding him of his own journey of healing after loss. He recognized in Max's face the same gradual lightening he'd experienced himself, the slow but steady process of learning to live with grief while allowing new joy to enter. You know what else? Max added, his face brightening. Mom smiles more now too. She asked me about what we talk about, and she actually listens. Yesterday, she came home early and we had dinner together. That's wonderful, Max, Eli said, genuinely pleased to hear about this development with Victoria. Yeah, Max nodded, then looked serious again. Mr. Turner, thank you for showing me that it's okay to be different, that our family can be different and still be good. The early morning light caught the tears gathering in Max's eyes, but his smile was steady and true. Eli felt his own eyes growing damp as he watched this young boy who had somehow worked his way into his heart, just as he had apparently worked his way into Max's. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the school courtyard as Eli finished his final rounds. The halls were quiet now, save for the distant hum of the janitor's cartwheels against the polished floors. He'd just finished cleaning the last classroom when he heard the distinct click of heels behind him. Victoria stood in the doorway, her usual business attire replaced by a more casual sweater and slacks. Something about her seemed different today, softer around the edges, less like the commanding CEO and more like Max's mother. Eli, she said, her voice gentle. Do you have a moment? He nodded, setting aside his cleaning supplies. Of course, Mrs. Carter. Please. She smiled. After all this time, it's Victoria. They settled into 2 student chairs near the window. The setting sun painted the room in warm amber tones, creating an atmosphere of intimacy that made Eli slightly uncomfortable. He shifted in his seat, waiting for her to speak. I've been wanting to talk to you, Victoria began, her hands clasped in her lap. About Max. About everything, really. She paused, collecting her thoughts. You know, when I first saw you helping him with his shoelaces that day, I never imagined how much that simple act of kindness would change our lives. Eli remained quiet, sensing she had more to say. Victoria's eyes grew misty as she continued. Max has changed so much since you came into his life. Do you know he made his bed this morning without being asked? And yesterday, I found him helping his younger cousin tie her shoes. She laughed softly, wiping at her eyes. He said he learned from the best. He's a good kid, Eli said simply. He just needed someone to show him the way sometimes. That's just it. Victoria leaned forward slightly. You showed him more than just how to tie shoes or clean a chalkboard. You showed him what it means to be a good person, to be responsible, to care about others. She took a deep breath. You showed him what I couldn't. Eli started to protest, but Victoria held up her hand. Please. Let me finish. I've spent years trying to give Max everything I thought he needed. The best schools, the finest clothes, every advantage money could buy. But what he really needed was something I couldn't purchase. Time, attention, and genuine care. The confession hung in the air between them. Outside, a group of birds took flight from a nearby tree, their shadows dancing across the classroom floor. I watched you with him, Victoria continued. How you always stopped what you were doing when he needed to talk. How you taught him to solve problems instead of avoiding them. The way you listened, really listened, when he spoke. Her voice cracked slightly. I learned from you too, you know. Eli shifted uncomfortably in his chair, unused to such praise. I just did what felt right. That's exactly it, Victoria smiled. You showed us both that the simplest actions, done with genuine care, mean more than grand gestures. When you turned down the promotion, twice, I'll admit I was frustrated at first, but now I understand. You chose what was truly valuable over what was merely profitable. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. Max wrote this for you. He wanted me to give it to you. She handed it to Eli, but gestured for him not to open it yet. He said it's for when you're alone. Eli took the envelope carefully, touching the paper as if it were precious. Victoria watched him with understanding eyes. You've taught us both so much about selflessness, Eli, about putting others first, about the quiet dignity of hard work, about being there for people who need you. She stood up slowly, smoothing her slacks. I wanted you to know that I see it, I appreciate it, and I'm grateful for it. The sunlight had shifted, painting the room in deeper shadows now. Victoria moved toward the door but paused, turning back to face him. You know, when I first offered you that promotion, I thought I was doing you a favor, but you showed me that true wealth isn't about money at all. It's about the lives we touch, the differences we make. Eli stood too, feeling the weight of her words. He'd never thought of his actions as particularly special or meaningful. He'd simply done what he believed was right, what his heart told him to do. Victoria's eyes met his, and in that moment, they shared an understanding that went beyond employer and employee, beyond even friendship. They were two people who cared deeply about a special little boy, each in their own way contributing to his growth and happiness. Thank you, she said simply, but the words carried the weight of months of gratitude, of witnessed changes, of silent appreciation. Eli nodded, realizing that their connection had indeed grown into something more meaningful than he'd ever expected. Not romance, not merely friendship, but a shared purpose in helping Max become the best version of himself. Victoria smiled one last time before turning to leave, her footsteps echoing in the empty classroom. The last day of school buzzed with excitement as children rushed through the hallways, their voices echoing off the walls. Eli pushed his cart down the corridor, pausing every few steps to pick up forgotten papers and stray pencils. His heart felt heavy, knowing this would be his last afternoon with Max before summer break. He found Max sitting on the steps outside, his backpack clutched to his chest. The boy's face lit up when he saw Eli approaching. You came, Max exclaimed, jumping to his feet. Of course I did, buddy. Eli smiled, setting aside his cleaning supplies. I wouldn't miss our last day together before summer. They settled on the steps, the warm June breeze rustling through the nearby trees. Max pulled out a paper bag from his backpack. I brought us cookies. Mom helped me make them last night. That was thoughtful of you, Eli said, accepting a slightly crumbly chocolate chip cookie. Remember when you first started coming to sit with me during lunch? Max nodded eagerly. You were trying to clean the windows, and I kept asking you questions about everything. You sure did, Eli chuckled, remembering how the curious little boy had followed him around, asking about cleaning solutions and why he used different cloths for different surfaces. But you know what? Those questions made my day better. Really. Max's eyes widened. Really. Eli reached into his pocket, pulling out an envelope. He'd spent hours the night before, writing and rewriting the letter inside, wanting to get the words just right. I have something for you too. Max carefully opened the envelope, handling it like it was made of gold. He unfolded the letter and began to read, his lips moving silently with each word. Dear Max, he read aloud. When I first met you, you were struggling with your shoelaces. Now look at you. You can tie them faster than I can. Max giggled at that part, glancing down at his perfectly tied shoes. As Max continued reading, his voice grew softer. You've taught me so much about what it means to be there for someone. Every time you smile, every time you share your thoughts with me, you make this world a better place. I want you to know how proud I am of you." Tears welled up in Max's eyes as he read the final paragraphs. Eli had written about Max's kindness, his determination to help others, and how much he'd grown over the year. The letter ended with a promise that Eli would always be there for him, no matter what. "Do you really mean all of this?" Max asked, clutching the letter to his chest. "Every word," Eli replied, his voice thick with emotion. "You know, sometimes the best families aren't the ones we're born into, but the ones we create through love and trust." Max nodded, understanding beyond his years. "Like how you and Charlie are family because you love each other so much." "Exactly like that," Eli said, thinking of his own son. "And you know what? There's always room in our hearts for more family." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching other students leave with their parents. Max fiddled with the corner of the letter, clearly deep in thought. "Remember when you taught me how to mop properly?" Max asked suddenly, grinning. "And I made such a mess that we had to clean it twice?" Eli laughed. "How could I forget? But you didn't give up. That's one of the things I admire most about you, Max. You never give up." "That's because you taught me to keep trying," Max said softly. "Just like you taught me about being kind and helping others." Eli felt his heart swell with pride. He watched as Max carefully folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope, treating it like a precious treasure. "I'm going to miss our talks," Max admitted, his voice small. "Summer feels so long." "I'll still be here when school starts again," Eli assured him. "And you know what? Sometimes the best part about missing someone is knowing they're thinking about you too." Max suddenly turned and threw his arms around Eli, hugging him tightly. "You're my dad in my heart, Eli," he whispered. Eli felt tears spring to his eyes as he hugged Max back. All the moments they'd shared, the lessons, the laughter, the quiet conversations, had built something beautiful and unexpected. He'd become more than just the school janitor who helped with shoelaces. He'd become a true father figure to this remarkable boy. The setting sun painted the sky in warm oranges and pinks as they sat there, neither wanting to let go just yet. In that moment, Eli understood that some bonds went beyond blood or circumstance. They were formed in the heart, built on trust, understanding, and unconditional love. The afternoon sun painted long shadows across the schoolyard as Eli waited by the front entrance. His worn leather shoes scuffed against the concrete, and his work uniform, though cleaned and pressed, showed signs of the day's labor. A gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of blooming spring flowers, and somewhere in the distance, birds chirped their evening songs. Max bounded down the steps, his backpack bouncing with each stride. His face lit up when he saw Eli, and that familiar warmth spread through Eli's chest, the kind of feeling that made everything else fade away. "Ready to head home, buddy?" Eli asked, reaching out to ruffle Max's hair. "Yeah." Max adjusted his backpack straps and fell into step beside Eli. "Can we take the long way? Through the park?" Eli checked his watch and nodded. "Sure thing. We've got plenty of time before your mom expects you back." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, their footsteps matching rhythm. The park spread out before them, its trees casting dappled shadows on the pathway. Children played on the swings and slides, their laughter carrying across the evening air. "Mr. Turner," Max's voice was thoughtful, "will you still be at school next year?" Eli smiled down at him. "Of course I will. Where else would I be?" "I don't know." Max kicked a small stone along the path. "Sometimes people leave." Eli stopped walking and knelt down to Max's level, looking him in the eyes. "Hey, remember what we talked about? About promises?" Max nodded solemnly. "That they're important, that we should only make them if we mean them." "That's right." Eli placed a gentle hand on Max's shoulder. "And I promised I'd be there for you, didn't I?" The boy's face brightened. "You did." They continued walking, passing beneath the canopy of old oak trees. The setting sun filtered through the leaves, creating patterns on the ground that danced with each breeze. "You know what I learned this year?" Max said suddenly. "What's that?" "That sometimes the best things happen when you're not looking for them." Max looked up at Eli with those wise eyes that seemed too knowing for his age. "Like meeting you." Eli's throat tightened with emotion. He remembered that first morning finding Max struggling with his shoelaces. Such a simple moment that had changed everything. "I learned something too," Eli said softly. "I learned that sometimes when you think you're helping someone else, they end up helping you even more." Max reached for Eli's hand as they walked, his small fingers wrapping around Eli's calloused ones. The simple gesture spoke volumes of trust, of love, of the kind of connection that defied explanation. They passed the duck pond, where they'd spent so many afternoons feeding the birds and talking about life. Max had opened up there about missing his father, about feeling different from the other kids. Eli had listened, offered comfort, and shared his own stories of loss and healing. "Mom says you're very wise," Max said, swinging their joined hands. "She says you taught me things she couldn't." Eli chuckled. "Your mom is pretty wise herself. She raised a pretty amazing kid. But you helped," Max insisted. "You showed me how to be brave, how to tie my shoes, how to clean the blackboard properly." He grinned. "Nobody else knows the secret of using vertical strokes first." They reached the playground area, and Max tugged Eli toward the benches. They sat down, watching the sky turn golden as the sun descended toward the horizon. "You know what else I learned?" Max asked, his legs swinging beneath the bench. "What's that? That family isn't just about who you're born to. It's about who chooses to love you." Eli felt his heart swell with pride and affection. He'd watched this boy grow so much over the past months, not just in height but in wisdom and understanding. "That's very true," Eli agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "Very true indeed." They sat there for a while longer, sharing stories about their favorite moments from the school year. Max talked about the time Eli helped him build a science project and how proud he felt when it won first place. Eli remembered the day Max stood up to a bully, not with fists, but with kind words, just as they'd discussed. As the sun began to set in earnest, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, they stood to complete their journey home. Max's house was just a few blocks away now. "Mr. Turner," Max said as they walked. "Yes, thank you. For everything. For being there. For listening. For caring." Eli squeezed Max's hand gently. "Thank you for letting me be there. For trusting me. For showing me that there's always room in our hearts for more love." They walked on, their shadows stretching long behind them. The evening air had grown cooler, but Eli felt warm inside. He thought about how life had brought him to this moment, through loss and grief, through loneliness and uncertainty, to find unexpected joy in helping a young boy find his way. Max skipped alongside him, humming a tune he'd learned in music class. His presence was a reminder that sometimes the best gifts come in the most unexpected packages. That sometimes life's greatest blessings arrive not in grand moments, but in simple acts of kindness, like helping a child tie his shoes. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Eli Turner, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.